Arthur Williams was the best counterfeiter of all time. He could make millions of fake bills. Could you imagine that this man, armed with a $60,000 suitcase of cash, faced arrest? But he easily got out of that situation, and in the end, his teenage son told everyone about him. The narrative encompasses numerous captivating incidents, investigative probes, falsified records, and additional aspects. Arthur Williams II is the main character in today's story. He is one of the best money counterfeiters in the United States, and he is the only person who has been able to make a copy of a $1 bill. Arthur started committing crimes when he was young. He broke the parking lot barriers for the first time to get food and help his mom. When he returned home one day to find an empty refrigerator, he became frustrated and began to think about their living conditions and the reasons they were so poor. Because he felt trapped, he went for a walk. As he crossed the street, he noticed a parking counter. As he pounded it to release his anger, he heard the sound of coins hitting the interior. He thought that he could just open the counter and take the money. He kept messing with the counter in an attempt to open it, and in the end, he was able to fit a small piece of iron into the lock hole and turn it right and left until it was open. He kept messing with the counter in an attempt to open it, and in the end, he was able to fit a small piece of iron into the lock hole and turn it right and left until it was open. After getting all the coins, he went to the store and bought everything he needed. When his mother came home, they were shocked. His mother's arrival stunned them. She asked him where all of these things came from. He confessed to her that he had accidentally broken a parking counter. His mother was upset that her son would steal to help her out, so she told him to stop. His father left them when Arthur was only 11 years old, which was the main reason why they were poor. He had never been so shocked in his life. Since they couldn't pay rent, they had to move out and stay elsewhere. Their only goal in a shelter for the homeless was to stay alive. The government gradually relocated them to a housing project. Arthur's life was going through a rough patch at the time, and every time he saw his mother's worn and sad face, he felt even worse about his father leaving them and making them live in such terrible conditions. Generally, housing projects, such as the one where Arthur and his mother lived, were teeming with gangs and prohibited activities. Arthur grew up in this place and made a lot of bad friends. They got together in small groups and stole things every once in a while. They used to break into stores, parking lots, and other places. A man named Da Vinci met Arthur when he was 15 years old, in 1987. His mother had a friend, or maybe a secret lover, with this man. One day, the police caught a man named Arthur attempting to steal a car. Da Vinci paid the bail and secured his release after his arrest. While they were walking back from the police station, Da Vinci told Arthur, "If you want to be a thief, you have to do the smartest things. Don't break counters or steal from cars and stores. You need something better, because you won't get anything else." "What do you mean?" Arthur questioned Da Vinci. He replied, "Come with me, and I'll show you." Da Vinci led Arthur to an old building that resembled a warehouse. Da Vinci led Arthur to an old building that resembled a warehouse. They walked into the building, got in the shaky lift, and went to the basement. The atmosphere was reminiscent of a workshop. Equipment, paper, ink, and other things came in lots of different types. Arthur walked in and shocked everyone. He first smelled the ink, and then asked Da Vinci, "Where is this?" He told them to just follow him. After that, they went to the machines and began to work. Arthur got the paper, placed the molds and ink in the machines, and then turned them on. At that point, Arthur realized that Da Vinci was actually making fake money. This shocked Arthur. He saw the money that everyone is desperately looking for appear right in front of his eyes. Da Vinci took Arthur to the workshop almost every day, where he learned how to print, mix colors, make molds, and give each bill its unique serial number. Arthur thought the work was great. The fake business's mood and artistic side appealed to him. Furthermore, Da Vinci became his father figure. He really cared about and loved him. He looked up to him like an idol. Of course, Arthur was very pleased with the money he won. The more he printed, the more money Da Vinci gave him. It became a job for him. For almost a year, things didn't change. After that, Da Vinci was gone. He stopped going to Arthur's house. He stopped hearing from him. Arthur found the workshop locked each time he attempted to enter. Now he doesn't know anything about Da Vinci. At that time, Arthur felt abandoned twice. It hurt a lot to feel this way twice, once from his biological father, and once from the man who had shown him a lot of love and respect. At this point, Arthur chose to get back with his friends and gang, and he started stealing again. This was wrong. The relationship between Arthur and a girl led to her getting pregnant. At age 17, Arthur had a son. He named him Arthur III. Arthur made the choice to care for this boy, be there for him, and not leave him like his father did. He had to work harder to support his son and mother. This is why Arthur and his friends came up with a new way to get money. They chose to steal from the drug dealers this time. They put on police uniforms and rode in a police car that looked like one. Because they lived in the same neighborhood, they knew the drug dealers personally, so they had a trustworthy idea of who I carry drugs with. They pretended to be police and barged into his house, taking his money and drugs. Also, the police didn't think this was strange at the time, and everyone knew that a lot of cops were dishonest. Everything Arthur and his friends did was acceptable because they kept the money and drugs they seized. Arthur and his friends repeated this over and over until they did something dangerous. As they attempted to engage in similar activities with a drug dealer, members of his gang were in proximity. He didn't want to give up and give them what they wanted, so he called out to his friends. His friends drew their guns and began firing at Arthur and his gang. Each of them immediately fled in a different direction. Arthur kept running even though he could hear gunshots next to him. A bullet struck him in the leg, causing him to fall to the ground. He started to bleed and slowly lost consciousness. He thought this was his last moment because he thought they were going to kill him. But when he woke up in the hospital, he saw that they had left him bleeding until the ambulance arrived. The events that unfold deeply shake Arthur. Because of this, he considered moving to Texas from Chicago. He is going to leave his son and mother, leaving him alone, just like his father did. After moving to Texas in 1993, Arthur was scared and didn't feel safe in Chicago. He tried to live a good life there. He did some tough jobs for little pay, but he didn't give up. It was his goal to change and begin a new journey, leaving behind the past and his criminal record. Around that time, Arthur met a girl named Natalie. Both of them fell in love with her. He asked her to marry him, and she said yes. Arthur trusted her too much, so he told her about his past and the harmful things he used to do. He told her about all the thefts, fakes, and other things. At first, he thought she would react like this. "I'm not ready to live with you. You flout the law and construct structures." She told him that he was the kind of man she had been looking for, and she liked that he had a criminal record. She kept trying to get him to switch back to the fake. "Why don't you do it again if you're so good?" she offered. "You'll work for yourself this time, though. We're going to get rich and have a better life." Over time, Arthur became more and more sure. He finally gave it some thought and made a detailed plan for the project. He started by buying printing presses. Then he thought back on what he had learned from Da Vinci that year. He printed some bills for tests and worked to improve his work. He wouldn't settle for anything less than the best. Arthur slowly started to print small amounts of fake money because it was easier to print money than to spend it, even though it was difficult to tell the difference between fake and real money. You should still be careful about how you spend it. He learned this from Da Vinci. Before he increased the amount, he wanted to make sure that everything was going well and no one could tell the difference. In 1996, Arthur and Natalie faced a significant challenge. In that same year, the U.S. government released a new $100 bill with extra security features that made it even harder to fake. The watermark, visible when you expose the bill to light, is one such feature. The used ink alters its color based on the angle of the bill's view, while the security tape turns gray under UV light. This bill has the Federal Reserve System seal and tiny writings called microprinting on it, which makes it impossible to make a fake copy of it. The American government initially released this version to combat widespread counterfeiting. But Arthur didn't give up. In fact, he was more hopeful. He was excited and saw it as a challenge. As he took on a new level that was very different from what he learned from Da Vinci, he needed to take charge and find his own way. Tools that didn't exist back then don't exist now. At that time, people began to use computers and design programs more and more frequently. Particularly, people viewed Photoshop as a brand new technology. Also, Arthur was likely one of the first people to use computers to make fake money. Before he can design, Arthur needs the printing paper more than anything else. The Federal Reserve must use the same paper. This is because most cashiers use a very simple trick to tell if the paper is real or fake. He could just bring a certain kind of pin and make a mark on the paper. It should be yellow, not red. This pin creates a brown line on white paper. The chemicals used in the paper made this new security feature possible. The problem was that this type of paper wasn't available to everyone. It wasn't paper at all. It contained cotton, linen, and a variety of chemicals. Where can I buy this kind of paper? Natalie and Arthur began purchasing paper from all over the world. They purchased a large quantity of paper and invested a significant amount of time in testing and experimenting with various types. But none of their tests worked. Things got such that Arthur started to feel hopeless and angry. When she became angry with him, she assured him that she wouldn't allow him to give up. The big book next to her was taken by her. It was a phone book. It looked like she was going to throw it at Arthur. She set it down on a table after that. Plus, she drew a line on the book while she talked to Arthur. Now for the surprise. The cue was yellow. They were shocked and looked at each other. And then they screamed with joy and happiness. Natalie found the company that made the phone books and called them, saying she was a teacher with a project for her students. It was the right kind of paper for her. They told her to take as much as she wants, because they didn't know she was going to use that paper to make fake money. When Arthur got the paper, he was impressed by how well it was written. He stacked 2 pieces of paper on top of each other, and it looked a lot like the true money. Natasha was told by Arthur that the watermark and the safe tape could be put between the 2 papers. All that's left is the ink that changes color. As Arthur walked down the street one day, he saw a car that had a purple and green dye on it. The car changed color every time Arthur moved, just like the $100 bill. When Arthur called the company that makes cars, he found out that it was the same company that the U.S. government uses to print money. In other words, they got to the source. They got everything ready. Everything is ready: paper, ink, and a design. The printing step is the only one left. And a lot of work needs to be done on this stage. Some printers can't print this color, but Arthur knew that all the bills were a creamy green color. To print this color, you need a pressing machine, and you have to press the paper more than once to get the color you want. They used to put on the ink, the watermark, and the security tape, and then they pressed the first time. After that, they put the picture in the middle and pressed it again. Finally, they put the serial number and seal on it and pressed it a 3rd time. Even better, they got a program that would automatically give each bill a serial number. Because of all of this, Arthur was the best money thief in U.S. history and maybe even the world. Arthur finally learned how to do it. The end result was crazy, and the fake bill looked exactly like the real one. Because he worked hard and was dedicated, he was able to get the same result as the first time. Natalie made the choice to do it for the first time. She bought a small item at the grocery store for $10 and gave the cashier $100 to get the change. $90 in real money. The cashier took out the special pin and made a line on the paper first, of course. The cue was yellow. He then tilted the bill and turned it over. The ink changed color a lot. Then he put the bill up to the light and saw the watermark. He was pretty sure it was a real bill, so he took it and gave her the change back. After going to the store, Natalie was very happy to get out, and Arthur knew that their money would help them get ahead when he saw her. After that, they started making more fake money. They used to print almost $50,000 a month, but they were very careful about how they spent it. They were warned that their money had been professionally faked, but it does happen. They would print money, move around, and spend it in one place for the next year and a half. After that, they went somewhere else right away. That was the best time to hide money. So they could get change in real, clean money. They bought things with fake money. In this way, their wealth grew. And life was like a dream for kids 22 and 23 years old. They were able to do what they pleased. They did this over and over to make their business bigger, printing more money until they were printing $30,000 a day. They have so much that they don't know what to buy anymore. They used to buy clothes, Pampers, and other things for kids and give them to charities. They were happier when they did those things. Years went by, and in 2000, Arthur chose to return to Chicago, where he grew up. Of course, Natalie went with him. Since many years ago, Arthur had taken care of his son and his son's mother, but he hadn't seen his 10-year-old son in a long time. The son became closer to his father when Arthur started to take him on trips and buy him toys, clothes, and anything else he wants. This made their relationship stronger. At the same time, Arthur got together with old friends and told them about his new business. He told them that he printed money and that this job made him a lot of money. Then he gave them an example, and they couldn't tell the difference. Arthur did tell his friends about his job because he needed help because he was printing more than he had money for. He planned to use his friends' connections in fancy restaurants, clubs, and casinos to get people to help him launder money. In fact, Arthur's money was almost everywhere. They were so good at it that even the FBI started to pay attention to this fake money. The people thought it was the best fake dollar in the whole market. There was a big difference between how much money Arthur could print and how much money was spread out. This made Arthur want to work with gangs. He sold $100,000 worth of fake money for $30,000. It was easier for him than to spend it and clean it himself. He would just give the money to gangs, and they would take it away. When Arthur joined these gangs, he knew he was going into a dangerous world, so he made sure to take extra care. Among other bad guys, he worked with Russian gangs and the Italian mafia. Before going anywhere, Arthur always checks to see if anyone is listening in on him through hidden microphones. Arthur is crazy about almost everything these days. He became so scared that whenever he met someone, he always brought a detector with him. He was not ready for any danger, and he stayed like this for years. One of the Russian gangs Arthur used to work with invited him to a party in 2002. There were lots of drugs there, and Arthur brought some of his fake money with him. That money was meant to be given to the Russian gang. Anyone could go to the party because it was in a nightclub at a hotel. There were even hotel workers there. The group reserved several rooms at that hotel. One of them was Arthur's room. Take a break, Arthur. He went to his room with a suitcase full of fake money. It had almost $60,000 in it, plus drugs that his Russian friends had given him. After 30 minutes, he heard knocks on the door and someone said, "Police, open the door." As soon as he opened the door, police officers with guns came into the room and began questioning him about the drugs. Arthur said he didn't have drugs, but there were some on the table next to his bed. The police searched the room and found the bag. This is when Arthur started to worry. One of the officers knew how to handle money, which was bad for him. At first, they thought it was money for drugs, but as the officer counted it, he felt something off. That's when they arrested him and took the drugs and money as proof. Arthur thought this was the end. This is when the police will find out that the money was fake, which is a much worse federal crime than having drugs on you. When the police started their investigation, Arthur hired a lawyer and showed him the police report. The report said that when Arthur was being arrested, the door to the room was open and drugs were found on the nightstand, which is why the police broke into the room and searched it. This wasn't possible, Arthur told the lawyer. The hallway was too long, and from the door, no one could see the bedside table. The lawyer asked for the case to be thrown out because the break-in was illegal and not authorized, and the reason given had already been shown to be false. Plus, the judge threw out the case because the inspection process was against the law. After all of this, Arthur became more scared. It was clear to him that the FBI would be watching him because they knew he had fake money on him. Along with his dealings with gangs, Arthur decided to stop printing and everything else he did. Still, Arthur was worried about everything and felt like he needed a new start to his life. That's when he began looking for his father, who had left him, and his mother when he was 11. After a lot of searching, he found someone in Alaska who knew his father's name. He wrote his father a letter and mailed it. His father called him back, and they talked for an hour after deciding to meet. Arthur got on a plane and flew to see his dad. Arthur felt both happy and sad the first time he saw his dad. He was glad to finally meet his dad, but he was also angry at him for leaving him when he was a child and his mother was having a hard time. Over the next few days, Arthur and his dad talked to each other almost all the time. His father asked him to apologize because he was having a rough time when he left them and had lost his mental health. This brought Arthur closer to his father and made him feel better, so much so that he told him about the fake money he had made. His dad paid attention and seemed interested the whole time. The father came to Arthur the next day and told him that he was having a hard time because he didn't have any money and wasn't doing well at work. He asked Arthur if he could print some money for him. Arthur was shocked by what his dad said, so he told him, "You want me to print money for you when I told you I was being arrested and would soon be in jail." In an attempt to convince him, his father said, You have a talent that you should use for our benefit. You have nothing to worry about if you are scared of the police here in Alaska. No one knows about you, and I am ready to help you." In the beginning, Arthur was scared, but he also wanted to see the pride in his dad's eyes, so he chose to print it again. In the past, Arthur hid some paper and the printers in a warehouse in Chicago. He asked his friends to take them to Alaska for him. After getting the package, he and his father started getting the printing shop ready. They became closer because of this event. Arthur was proud of how far he had come and was happy to show his dad. But this time, the result wasn't great. It wasn't terrible either, but it wasn't as good as the previous ones. For their own safety, Arthur told his father that they should only tell each other about this and that they should test the money first, just like he did with Natalie. Even though he seemed to understand, his father did the exact opposite. That's the first thing he did. He then gave his wife Anise $3,000 to spend and clean. Anise then gave some of the money to some neighbors so they could spend it and clean it. When those stupid people got the money and saw that it looked a lot like real money, they decided not to wash it because they thought no one would be able to tell the difference. They didn't even change it for real money. They just spent it like any other money. The dad, his wife, and the neighbors are all of them. Arthur didn't know what was going on, but he thought his father was acting strange. When Arthur asked his father about the money he had, his father would avoid answering and change the subject. Arthur stopped printing and left Alaska when he saw that things were not going well. Arthur talked to his dad and told him he was leaving because he was tired of printing money. On the other hand, his father did not try to persuade him to stay. He let him go because he knew how to print already and planned to keep going on his own. Anise gave the money to a couple, and they spent it normally after Arthur left Alaska. This was good for Arthur. They bought things at a store. The money they used was fake. The cashier knew right away that the money was fake when he saw it, so he called the police right away. Both of them were then arrested. The couple was asked to help the police find the person who was printing the money, and they were able to catch Arthur's father and his wife. While their neighbors were on the phone with the police, they admitted to forgery and gave all the details. Think about when the police are looking into Anise. She told them about Arthur and that he was with them. The FBI and special forces raided Arthur's house as soon as he got back to his wife Natalie and their children, Texas. But Arthur was careful and knew exactly what he was doing. His house didn't hold anything. He hid the fake money in plastic cans and buried them in the woods because that was all he had. Even so, he was arrested because his stepmother was there to see what happened. His son Arthur's dad got 5 years in prison in the end. It took 3 years for Arthur. Even though he planned the crime, he got a lighter sentence than his father because his father was arrested in the middle of it, and Arthur was sentenced based on the testimony of his father's wife. Anise and her neighbors were let go because they helped the police. Arthur went to jail and stayed there for 2.5 years. Being away from his son and wife during this time was one of the hardest things in his life. Everything made him think about his life and what led him to this point. During his time in prison, he promised himself that he would never again be involved in crime. He was now just waiting for the day he could start a new life. Something strange happened the day he was freed. Let's say that his father died in prison on the day he got out. It was really hard for him. Just as he was getting ready to start a new part of his life, he got sad news. Even though Arthur's father left him when he was young and his mother was having a hard time making ends meet, Arthur loved his father very much. The death of his father affected him a lot. His son, Arthur III, was the only person who was important to him. Arthur moved back to Chicago in 2004 to be closer to his 15-year-old son and spend more time with him. Arthur tried to get his life back to how it was. He had more than one job. He worked as a room service waiter and a bathroom cleaner. These were both temporary, part-time jobs that paid very little. It must have been really hard for him because he was taking care of his son and his son's mother. He still had fake money buried in the woods, but he didn't want to use it because he didn't want to mess up his life again unless his son needed something. For the first time in years, he tried to fix his relationship with his son and make up for the time that had passed. Their relationship got much better in a big way. In 2005, the famous magazine Rolling Stone wrote an article about Arthur and called him the world's best fake money artist. They said he lied about having more than $10 million. The story his son was reading didn't really make sense to him. He then asked his dad, and his dad said, "Yes, I did it. Sometime in the past few years, I think I've reached that number or even more." His son was moved enough by the article and its details to decide to give it a try. His son scanned money and printed it in his room because intelligence is not something you are born with. When Arthur IE's mother saw what he was doing, she called his dad right away and told him that his son was printing money in his room. Arthur felt bad about himself and guilty because the article made him look smart when he was actually a criminal. He also didn't think that his answer to his son's question would make him think about following in his footsteps. When Arthur got home right away, he went to his son's room and saw him using his own printer to print a $20 bill. The son was going through a very hard time in his life at the time. He was using drugs and having mental health issues, so his father yelled at him, telling him that he didn't need to do this because he was taking care of him. The son told his father that he could do whatever he wanted. It got louder between them as they talked. The boy's son ran out of the house with the note of money. While people in the street watched, his father ran after him, and the two of them kept yelling and fighting. When the son became enraged, he threw his money at Arthur, resulting in disastrous consequences for everyone involved. At that very moment, a police car drove by the street by accident. The police stopped them so they could see what was going on, and Arthur went down to get the money right away. He also told the police officer that everything was fine. He was handling a minor dispute with his son. The police officer asked Arthur what his name was, made sure he was who he said he was, and then called for help. After a short time, the FBI and police had already blocked off the street. Once they had proof of the money, they handcuffed Arthur and took him to the FBI building, where one of the top officers informed him of the situation. While $20 isn't important to us, that $100 in your pocket looks old. When he needed it, he was still using this fake money. Upon his initial arrest, the court sentenced Arthur to 3 years in prison due to insufficient evidence. They have now arrested him again and charged him with the same crime. It was shown to be true. In the end, he got 9 years in prison. The FBI tried to get his son, Arthur III, to testify against his father while he was in a juvenile detention center for a few months. Yet he refused. Upon his second imprisonment, Arthur experienced a profound sense of hopelessness. He believed he was the worst loser in the world due to his inability to resolve issues with his father or his child. His mind was filled with hate at that very moment. His son went back to live with his mother, but the two of them didn't get along at all, so he left the house and lived by himself. After that, he dedicated all of his time to creating counterfeit money for several years. He had customers, even though his money wasn't very good. It looked like a scanned copy of a bill. He worked hard to make things better. He got better tools. He only wanted to do what his dad did. He set up a workshop and brought in machines, printers, and a lot of new tools. Following that, he got more jobs. The printers worked almost the whole night. He was 18 years old at the time, though. One of the biggest jobs was waiting for him. Out of nowhere, a bunch of FBI agents stormed the workshop. He was caught in the act. His dad was shocked when he heard the news. He felt like he was guilty because his son had also gone to prison for forgery. A month later, the prison granted Arthur's request to move to his son's cell. When Arthur saw his son again, he was thrilled and happy. They became friends over the years they spent together. They always talked about their future plans and goals, as well as what they would do after prison. Arthur wanted to be an artist. He painted while he was in jail. He started working as an artist after he got out of prison in 2015. All of his works were inspired by his life and the lessons he learned about forgery. He utilized the built-in security features in his works. The works that Arthur made were worth between $40,000 and $50,000, and everything in his life changed. He would paint a picture with $100,000 and sell it instead of making fake $100 bills. The story's moral is that everyone can be successful if they know how to use their skills and abilities properly.